My name is Ronan Kennedy. I'm an executive career coach, and today I'm going to be talking to you about how to delegate like a boss. So, thanks for joining in today. If you have any questions, please pop them in the chat and I'll get to them as soon as I can. Um, this is one of the topics that I think a lot of business owners, a lot of new managers struggle with. Delegation. Delegation is a tricky thing because we have a couple of challenges that we're not sure how to overcome. So I'm going to go through those step by step and give you some frameworks. I'm also going to challenge some potentially limiting beliefs that you or I or both of us might have. So let's get into it. So delegation is all about building better systems, empowering great people, and protecting your time so that you can avoid costly mistakes, because you don't want to become the assistant's assistant. So when you don't delegate, guess who ends up fetching their own calendar invites, doing their own graphics and Googling, how do I delegate better? It's the moment when you've delegated something to someone else and then you're helping them with that task, even though you've already given them instructions, you've already shown them how to do it. Now you're the assistant's assistant. So you've actually given yourself a demotion. So you're actually below them because you're helping them with it. So that's the road to burnout, because now you're doing their job, you're trying to teach them, and you're doing your job. You don't want to become the assistant's assistant. You want to learn to delegate properly. This is a great quote from Tim Ferriss. Being busy is a form of laziness, lazy thinking and indiscriminate action. Being overwhelmed is often as unproductive as doing nothing and is far more unpleasant. Being selective, however, doing less, is the path to the productive. Focus on the important few and ignore the rest. Well, it's so, he says it so well, right? Being busy is kind of lazy because we're not really focusing on what we need to prioritize. We're just doing everything because maybe we don't know what a priority is or what the number one priority is. This is what a lot of new managers might say. Maybe you've heard your boss or someone saying this before. When you say, what's the priority? And they say, everything's the priority. Well, that's a lazy form of thinking, because really they're not taking the moment to sit down and say, well, what is the actual number one most important thing that's going to make a difference, that's going to move the needle, that's going to add more revenue, that's going to please and excite our customers even more. Whereas taking a moment and doing less and focusing on the most important things is often much harder, or it feels much harder anyway. So delegation is really growth. You're understanding how delegation can, well, it takes bravery, but it also helps you get clarity. It helps you to scale. It helps you get more time back so you can focus on the higher and more valuable activities. So the secret is to start small, to build trust and reinvest that, save time, right? And save money as well. There's a lovely quote that I think sums this up. It's like, this is a well-known maxim. If you want to go fast, go alone. And that's what a lot of self-employed people do. But if you want to go far, go together, right? You have to go with other people. You have to build a team. That's going to allow you to create a repeatable, implementable system that will work if you're there or if you're not there. That's really the secret to growth for businesses. The challenges with delegation that we come across again and again are delegation feels like a cost. And people say, I don't have the money. A lot of people say it's quicker to do it myself rather than teaching someone else to do it. And then I have to show them how to do it again. And maybe they don't do it right and then I have to do it anyway. And they also feel like they won't do it to the standard that I would do it. So for these three reasons, delegation feels like a cost. It feels quicker to just do it yourself. And it feels like someone else won't do it to the same standard that you would do it. So let's go through these, each one step by step. Delegation feels like a cost. I hear you. It does feel like a cost. In a way it is, in a way it isn't. So when you see the money leave, let's say you pay a virtual assistant €500 a month, you see the tasks done, but you don't see the revenue coming back from that, because you're just really giving them administration tasks, non-revenue generating tasks. You might even see some of the profit drop in the short term because now you're delegating work to them and you're focusing on training them or upskilling them in it. So your brain says this costs money and that doesn't feel good. So you want to take it back over and you want to reduce that cost, which makes sense as a business owner. But then it doesn't really make sense in the end, because now you're working like a virtual assistant when you should be on the higher and better value uses of your time. But you're not losing the €500. Really, you're buying back 20 hours of your time, or 10 hours or 50 hours, whatever it might be. So if your time is worth €100, that's €2,000 in potential value. Every time you delegate, that's an hour that you can invest in a higher value activity. The question then is, what's the highest value thing you could do at that time? And I think that's where a lot of people struggle, is they understand the idea of delegating, especially delegating work they don't want to do, or that's low level, or not interesting, or outside their skill set. But then when they have that extra time back, they're not sure how they actually have the opportunity to delegate revenue generating opportunities. So the question is, do you believe you can generate or you can create new revenue or cost saving opportunities? If yes, you believe you can create these opportunities, what's stopping you delegating more so you can create those revenue generating opportunities? If no, if you don't really believe you can create those revenue generating or cost saving opportunities, what isn't working in your current approach? Why is it that if you don't have more time as a business owner or as a manager, you can't create those new opportunities? Is it that you don't have the right product market fit? Is it that you just don't know how to solve that problem? Is it a case of you don't know where the extra customers are, or you don't know how to add more value to your clients? What is it that stops you generating those extra revenue opportunities or those cost saving opportunities? So, in that case, if you don't think you can create those opportunities, you have to ask yourself, am I doing all this work so that I don't have to deal with that bigger problem of generating revenue generating opportunities? Sorry, that's a real mouthful. Or are you really just unsure of what step to take next? So I think that's a key question, because sometimes people will take on all this extra work and they're just not really sure, because it saves them from actually sitting down and figuring out that much more difficult problem. So you got to ask yourself, what are those extra revenue generating opportunities? How much will this actually cost? I hate budget surprises. Of course, everyone wants to know what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, how it's going to happen, especially when it comes to finances and budgets. So, how can you mitigate this? Well, build a timeline and build a roadmap so that you can budget together with the person you're outsourcing or delegating the work together, the work to. So estimate the time and cost. You might have a roadmap of 12 weeks or 3 months and say what it's going to cost each month. Identify the potential risks. So maybe in this case, it could cost more. In this case, it could take longer, so that you factor in those extra costs or those extra delays. By the way, everything takes longer than we expect, and everything costs a little bit more than we expect. So it's not if it happens, it's pretty much when it happens. And then confirm everything in writing, ideally in a shared spreadsheet or a shared folder. Now, you might say, well, that's all great and well if you have some money or if you have a big budget, but what if you don't have a budget, or what if you don't have money? Well, it's not just about spending money, it's about buying your time back. The real question is, what's the cost of doing it yourself? Now, once you get over that kind of mental roadblock that a lot of us have, it's a case of delegating one small task. Now, if you really don't have any money to work with, or if your budget's totally run out for the year, maybe you can trade, right? Maybe you can trade your time or your skills or your network or some other bit of leverage you have, like a connection or some access to an event. Maybe there's some other leverage you can use. So it's not always just about money. For example, if you design websites and it takes you, let's say, 10 hours to design a website, and someone else designs graphics and it takes them 10 hours to design the graphic, but it would take them 20 hours to design the website and it would take you 20 hours to design the graphics, you would both save each other uh, time and money if you did an exchange uh, for your for each of your skills. That way you can not actually spend any more money, and just use barter to save time, save money, and still get the result you want. So in that case, it's just thinking outside the box a little bit to see how the skill swap or the barter or some other leverage can allow you to delegate work, and that way it would save time. So instead of spending 20 hours working on graphics, you just spend 10 hours working on the website, and then it saves you that extra 10 hours. In the long run, the strategic delegation often saves you time, saves you money. So, 3 no-cost ways to delegate even if you're broke. Simplify before you delegate. automate repetitive tasks. Then you can barter or skill swap, and you can leverage your assets, whether you have software that they need, whether you have a facility that you need, whether it's um, you know, access to an event that you have that you can give them, or an introduction to someone else. The time trap. It's quicker to just do it myself. You hear this so often with new managers, or with people who haven't delegated before, or with business owners who need to, I guess, refine this delegation skill. And delegation is an investment of time, for sure. Definitely, you don't just give it to them and then walk off into the distance and work on other activities in your business. There's definitely an initial investment. So look at this on the screen here. Week one, let's say you're delegating to someone. Maybe you spend 5 hours doing the task and you spend 2 hours training them, training the new person. That's 7 hours in total. Okay. It feels longer and more expensive than just doing it yourself, because just doing it yourself would have been 5 hours. But then week two, you're doing it for 3 hours, right? And then they're doing it for 3 hours. So still, it takes longer than week one, but you're making progress. By week three, maybe you're doing 0 hours and they're doing 6 hours. Now, when they're doing 6 hours, it still takes longer than it would take if you're doing it on your own, but you're totally free to work on other activities. And then week four, your 5 hours are totally freed up to work on higher and better value work, and their 5 hours are working at full speed and at a lower price point than it would be if you were working at that price point. So another challenge is standards. A lot of people feel, well, they won't do it to the same standard that I would, and that's often going to be the case, but not always. And sometimes they're going to do it way better than you would do it. I know that's probably a hit to the ego. It's definitely a hit for the ego to me as well, because I think there's things I could do better, but then in reality, I can see other people do things way, way, way better. So then, how can we deal with that? Well, it's about writing clear requirements, spell out the goals, define deliverables, audience, and desired outcomes. So exactly what you want. Be very specific. The more specific you are, the less room for the less room for wiggling or maneuvering or making mistakes. Say exactly what you want and define it with clear goals, right? I want to go from X to Y by when. And you can even say what you don't want. So you set the parameters on both sides. I want the website to be clean and fresh and professional. I don't want this. I don't want it to be like more than 3 pages. I don't want it to have more than 3 colors. I don't want it to have any very high level language that people can't understand. So you can say what you want and what you don't want. Set clear goals and spell out exactly what the deliverables are, your type of audience, and then you should be on the right track. You can also make sure you stick to very good instructions. So when you write it all out, they can go back and reference that. If there's any mistakes, you can go back and say, well, did you see this point here? And you can bring their attention to it again. So you can write it. Here's a great example of some delegation instructions. Draft an email to clients announcing the new product feature by the end of day on Tuesday. Email should include benefits, a clear call to action, a link to the product page, and be proofread for grammar, and so on and so forth. And then on the other side, you can see vague or unclear instructions like handle the product thing, or just make it look good, or get it done when you can, or you know what to do. It's like they're vague, it's unclear, it's not specific. So make sure your instructions are very specific and there's not a lot of wiggle room or room for error or interpretation. One of my favorites: start with a trial. Start small, pay fairly, and allow them to learn quickly. The trial tells you not just what you've talked about, but how they actually perform when they're doing the work. So you give them clear instructions like we spoke about. Then you can give them feedback once they've done it, and you give them another chance to produce even better work. And if you trial 2 or 3 people or 5 people, then you can see who performs the best with the set timeline, with the set instructions, and include the feedback that you've given them, who has done the best result and given you the best return on investment for your money. You can also get a chance of figuring out what they're like to collaborate with. Are they open-minded or are they defensive? Do they take feedback well? Do they disagree with you? Is communication clear? You can answer all those sort of questions just by getting started and doing a little bit of the work. Show a great example. A great example will be a nice visual reference or visual benchmark. It shows them exactly what you expect. You can explain why it works and ask them why they think it works. You can ask them if they would improve it. You can ask them if they could do something similar. And you use that as a reference point. So they can always check back and compare whatever they do to that and make sure that it's either equal or even better. By the way, that's one of the things I really love for team members to do is they don't just come back and say, yeah, I'll do what you've asked me to do. They say, yes, and I'll do the next step, or I can add this on as well. So they add extra value or extra benefits or extra bonuses on top. Basically, they make it even better than you've asked them to because they're such an expert in what they do. Set clear boundaries. So you want to protect both sides to make sure you're going to start the relationship off on the right foot. You create trust, you reduce tension, and also you prevent scope creep. Now, scope creep is like famously difficult to mitigate. Scope creep, basically, for anyone who hasn't come across it before, it's when a project deadline, timeline, and budget is set out, that often it ends up going over. So people ask more work to be done within the same timeline and in the same budget, and that's called scope creep, where the project keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and usually the resources and the time don't get bigger, and that causes tension and causes friction. So you have to be able to say what's included and what's excluded so you can avoid scope creep as best as possible. Ideally, if you had a little bit of leeway, a little bit of flexibility, that can reduce tension over time as well. Setting time limits for the work to be done, for feedback or for reports or for analytics to be presented. Ask them how many revisions they get. Like some graphic designers or website designers or video designers, any of the kind of creative arts, they'll often give you some revisions. They might say, well, you can come back to me and make adjustments 3 times. Not 3 adjustments, but 3 times coming back. So you might come back every week for 3 weeks, but you don't want to come back every day for 3 weeks. Then that will cause frustration on behalf of the designer typically. So how many revisions do I get? Is it 1? Is it 2? Is it 3? Or is it none? And then communication cadence, right? You don't want to be texting them on email, on WhatsApp, on LinkedIn, on all these different places. You want to say, this is where we communicate. This is how we communicate. We'll have 1 meeting or 2 meetings over the course of the project so that everyone's on track and all the expectations are set out up front. Check reviews and references. So you can look at their profile, or you can look at their previous work or their portfolio. You can ask for samples. You can read the testimonials. You can also contact the references. One of the things I like to do is look for the length of the relationship. So have they worked with somebody for a very long time? That's a great sign that they're doing really good work. So if they've got long-term recurring clients, you know that people are very happy with their work and continue to work with them. So here is a delegation checklist. Write clear requirements, say what you want, what you don't want. Show good and bad examples so they know exactly what the benchmarks are. Set clear boundaries for your communication style, for what's in scope, what's out of scope, for how many meetings you're going to have. Build a roadmap and budget together so you know what the timeline is, you know how much is going to be spent, and you've got a bit of leeway there also. Run a paid trial exercise. Super good way of figuring out exactly how they perform and the way they take feedback. Check reviews and references, especially looking out for those long-term contracts that they've worked on or those long-term clients that they've worked with. Build tight feedback loops. The quicker you give feedback to someone and the quicker they get feedback from you, the better able they are to tweak what they do, to improve it, and to come back to you quicker. If it takes like 3 weeks to get feedback, then it takes a very long time for them to actually tweak it and improve. Then finally, the crucial part is leveraging the new revenue generation or cost saving activities that you've gotten back because you've delegated the work out. I think that's one of the key messages from this webinar today, is to be able to understand what are those key revenue generating or cost saving activities that you can implement, that you can introduce once you've got that extra time back. Because then when you delegate the administration work or the lower level work, now you've got this extra time. How can you bring your business to the next level? If you're interested in this type of topic, in delegation and reducing overwhelm and burnout, the Entrepreneurial Mastermind is a group session that I run every week. It's a 75-minute session with a maximum of 6 people. That's where we share wins, we talk about challenges, we give each other feedback. It's for business owners, founders, freelancers, consultants, and it's about getting like a structured and supportive place where you can be held accountable, you can get support, you can get feedback, you can reduce overwhelm, and you get to connect with other like-minded people who are on a similar journey. So if you're interested in that Entrepreneurial Mastermind, check it out in the chat. 75-minute session once a week, maximum of 6 people. I also do a monthly coaching session, group coaching session with the entrepreneurs or the business owners. That's where we have 6 people and we each work on one challenge. And then I coach them through that over the course of the hour. So if you're interested in that, click the link in the chat or below this video to find out more. Or send me a message, info@ork.ie, and we can set up a free call and chat through it then. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this, and yeah, see you next time.